Yes, yes. Welcome to the ancient world of tabletop games. I am Agamemnon from the historical documentary Time Bandits. This is a report from a fugitive.
On the basis that you want to use figures and floor plans for games of Dungeons & Dragons, how far do you go to set up terrain and magical effects? The magic item Daern'S Instant Fortress is 20 feet on a side, and you can represent this structure on a piezo battle grid by using a piece of cardboard that's 4 squares by 4. Job done. Let's say you want to use the official miniature by Wizkids. I don't think you can call that a mini, more of a biggie. If you decide to set the scene a bit fancier than cardboard, use one of those spell templates by the same company. Again, job done, and you won't have to shell out for the large tower. If you don't want to shell out for spell templates, 4 dice on your map outlining a square will see you through. In terms of the product, it isn't 20 feet across. There's a standard D&D grid for comparison. Almost there. Some artistic and design liberties may have been taken. What is Daern'S Instant Fortress? You pop this small cube in the microwave for half a minute and then place it on the ground before it does its exploding popcorn thing. Says so in the Dungeon Master's Guide. And that is a role-playing fact. This is a portable shelter, a defensive measure, a watchtower, and, if you aren't careful, a hell of a liability inside a low-ceilinged room down the dungeon. The item is a small cube, represented as a separate model in the box, so even the starting state is available as a prop at your gaming table if you buy this. The player in charge of the cube could wave it to show everyone that all hell's about to break loose, or set it on the table and press the stylized button on the upper face just for comedy effect. All hell breaking loose? Yes, for it is a direct weapon as well as being a defensive measure. And now a word about the box the model arrives in. These cardboard inserts add to the plastic shells that provide protection in transit. Once the tower is out of there, those cardboard pieces boost the fiddliness of returning the model to the box. Annoying, but keep that in mind. Here's the figure itself. Once your character places the tiny cube on the ground and utters a command word, the fortress springs into life. The door opens at the user's command, and there you have it, a metal fortress. The paint job on the grey plastic is fine. How much of an improvement do you want to make? Spray black and then use a very large dry brush to cover the model in metallic paint, but this time the battle scars would stand out more easily. Paint-wise, I'm inclined to leave the tower as it is. As far as material goes, the figure is of hard plastic. Don't drop it from on high, or you'll have a ruined tower on your hands. The figures on the corners, grotesques, have wings of softer plastic. There's a bit of give in them, so they are less likely to snap off. If they do, good luck gluing them back on, or just lean into that ruined tower look. For measuring purposes, the standard scale reference model is, as usual, the gelatinous cube. There are 2 working doors. The trapdoor in the roof opens onto a series of baffles leading to the front door, which slides up and allows dice to escape. Is the dice tower part of the design much more of a selling point? Only you can judge. That spinning effect was annoying, but the roll came up 20, so I just let it lie there. The main drawback with a dice tower that has no enclosed courtyard is the risk that your dice flee the scene. This model provides presence on the table. If you're going to huddle characters inside the tower as your enemies thunder on horseback across the vast plain, then do so at one end of the table, and gasp as the Dungeon Master sets out a small army at the far end. What is the main function of the Instant Fortress? Defensive? Its walls are made of stern stuff, and barring a protracted assault from siege engines, should stand up to a fair old battering. Let's check out the Dungeon Master's Guide. The tower forms with battlements. Early versions of D&D are written in a language known as High Gygaxian, it's true. So expect more technical terms the further back you delve into the hobby's fossil record. The tower used to appear with machicolations, then crenellations, and now battlements. Crenellated ones. Going by the spare 5th edition description, the magic item is still lacking in details for use. How do you deal with such a loose outline in a game? It is not for the player characters to interpret the deployment of the fortress. No, the rules are applied in their strictest form by the strictest dungeon master in the world, a bastard who knows the player characters are always grubbing for a bonus. That's a highly technical term. From that strict baseline of operations, your own DM will vary. Who is the strictest DM in the world? It's not me, and it's not you. Okay, maybe it is you. Let's try to break down the magic item description. That isn't easy, it's made of tough stuff, remember? You can use an action to place this 1-inch metal cube on the ground and speak its command word. The cube rapidly grows into a fortress that remains until you use an action to speak the command word that dismisses it, which works only if the fortress is empty. Sounds easy, right? The Goblin football team is fast approaching across the river. They wish to discuss the latest score with you and they've brought swords to make a few points. You place the cube on the ground, whisper Shazam, and the fortress pops up. Sadly, when the goblins come knocking on the door, you're busy inside with other things. Player characters, though, will grab around for a bonus, knowing from the item description that this thing can also be used as a weapon. So before we even get into that, what does the strict DM say about its use? The strictest DM starts at the first sentence. You can use an action to place this 1-inch metal cube on the ground and speak its command word. This is the only way to activate the item. You kneel, put the cube on the ground, and say the word. All is one action, or the thing doesn't work. The process must be completed in its entirety as one action, or nothing happens. But the strictest DM wouldn't be so strict, surely? Of course not. The strictest dungeon master wouldn't let the player characters get their dirty mitts on this item in the first fucking place, and that really is a role-playing fact. Why does the strictest DM apply this ruling? All or nothing activation. It shuts down the conversations about lobbing the cube like a grenade, stashing it on the battlefield to be used like a massive landmine, shoving the cube in an ogre's ear, making a gnome swallow the cube and letting the Tarrasque try a gnome burger. Its main function is to act as a shelter. The fortress is a square tower, 20 feet on a side and 30 feet high, with arrow slits on all sides and a battlement atop it. Its interior is divided into 2 floors, with a ladder running along one wall to connect them. The ladder ends at a trapdoor leading to the roof. When activated, the tower has a small door on the side facing you. The door opens only at your command, which you can speak as a bonus action. It is immune to the knock spell and similar magic such as that of a chime of opening. So, it's a password-protected panic room for wilderness adventures. Place the cube on the ground, utter the magic word, and the fortress is right in front of you, with the door also right in front of you. What does it remind me of? Okay, the fortress looks like a tower, which isn't what I have in mind. Other than that, though, if you trek through the Highlands or Heelands, you'll find a place called a bothy. This provides shelter. So what the hell is a bothy exactly? 4 walls, a roof and a door. An uninhabited building with no facilities. Expect nothing, just shelter. There's no heat, light, electricity, gas, water or toilet. If you're lucky, there'll be a fire. It doesn't mean there'll be fuel for that fire. It's likely there won't be trees nearby. Even so, you aren't allowed to cut live trees down for a fire. There's no guarantee there's a nearby stream for your water. You are expected to march far from the bothy and any stream to use the extremely outdoor toilet. If you are lucky, there'll be a spade to do a bit of digging, so you can bury your output. Leave the bothy as you find it, only adding new supplies. Clean your mess. Does a bothy have a wee bit of a Dungeons and Dragons feel to it? This instant fortress has a sense of being a portable bothy, rather grand. The real bothy is remote. You'll have to walk there. They are aye in the distance, for legal reasons. A bothy is in the distance. Size, 1 story, 2 if fortune smiles upon you, and that second one is bound to be a loft space. Officially, a bothy is under the care and maintenance of the Mountain Bothy Association. Anyone could use the word bothy to describe their wee hotel, but that's no the same thing. Your wee hotel will be on a main road with facilities, and you'll be charged to use those. A real bothy is at the arse end of the backside of exactly nowhere, has a functioning door as the main facility, and costs you nothing to stay in but time. Scottish weather is predictably unpredictable. If you're injured and caught short near sunset in a gathering storm that'll shred your tent and steal your haggis, then 4 walls, a stout door, and a roof sound very promising indeed. In a game of D&D, having a portable bothy, 2 stories, no facilities but offers shelter, that sounds just as promising. Let's be clear, strictest dungeon master or otherwise, the main function of this magic item is not to cause damage. It's a shelter from harsh weather and harsher wilderness encounters. But to damage we must return. Each creature in the area where the fortress appears must make a difficulty class 15 dexterity saving throw, taking 10d10 bludgeoning damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. In either case, the creature is pushed to an unoccupied space outside, but next to the fortress. Objects in the area that aren't being worn or carried take this damage, and are pushed automatically. This is not a giant hammer that you whack your enemies with on the battlefield. First, you have to set the cube down in front of your enemies, ensure they don't hear the command word words spoken. That's your action used up. Second, this is not an item to be used in enclosed spaces. Third, abuse of a magic item will be countered with abuse from the direction of the strictest dungeon master, engaging in a petty arms race escalating into a situation that amuses no one. The fortress is rare. When the chips are down and the odds are against the party, it is nice to see a powerful item used to shift the scales of fate. But the fortress isn't a cause of deforestation, as you slam trees with it to make your travel through the woods easier. You'll send a lot of wooden splinters flying, attract attention with the noise, and enrage any druids travelling with you. Just walk around the trees for fuck's sake. In short, using the tower as a source of damage is a limited tactic. There are far more ways for enemies to engage you in battle than there are for you to stomp enemies with a large magic fortress. If, as a DM, you are worried about the players going wild with this item, then worry about what they will do with every magic item and spell at their disposal. But I'm not here to cover all possibilities. We fucking superglued the instant fortress cube to the back of a radio-controlled Sturgy and flew it into Castle Ravenloft all the way to Strahd's Neck and did the command word over Wi-Fi, so the Lord of the Undead became Daern'S instant soup. Then we bottled that and sold it on eBay as the vital juices of a vampire lord. 3,000 barrels sold already. Now and again we put a drop of the actual juice in there whenever the government inspectors come along looking for undead DNA samples. I'm going out on a limb here. At that point, you are no longer playing D&D. On the other hand, if you are having fun, that's your business. I used to say that the D&D cops have no jurisdiction in any jurisdiction and that no one is coming after your game. But I must now add, unless that game is Magic the Gathering, in which case expect a visit from highly insistent door-to-door salesmen. How characters obtain the fortress is one thing, but how do they maintain it? Not easily. You can only end the fortress effect if the structure is empty, no one inside, and no equipment in there too, not even a lone copper coin. The item's wording has a touch of ambiguity on the command word that dismisses the fortress. Does that mean the command word to activate and the command word to deactivate are different words? Fuck knows. The front door only opens on the user's command, no one else's, but the trapdoor appears to be free for all to use. Anyway, don't be on top of the tower when it vanishes. That's a 30-foot drop. As for damage to the tower is made of adamantine, and its magic prevents it from being tipped over. The roof, the door, and the walls each have 100 hit points, immunity to damage from non-magical weapons, excluding siege weapons, and resistance to all other damage. Only a wish spell can repair the fortress. This use of the spell counts as replicating a spell of 8th level or lower. Each casting of wish causes the roof, the door, or one wall to regain 50 hit points. To preserve a sense of mystery, the Dungeon Master should keep track of these hit points. Players are free to ask how the tower is looking these days, of course. Okay, not bad. Rough as a Tarrasque's backside. Depending on what other players get up to, you might walk around the fortress and discover someone has painted a giant ogre dick on the back of it, or a rainbow flag down both sides. Though the tower can't be tipped over, it could be flooded. There are loads of questions about this item. Who the fuck knows the answers? Your Dungeon Master must decide on how things work. Normal weapons can't harm the tower. I suspect this is why it was never given an armor class. It's a design feature, folks, not a bug. Does it have the armor class of a wall, or of adamantine? A random armor class based on the idea of shooting at a building that cannot dodge your attacks? How does a cube work? You expand it into a fortress, then you dismiss the fortress back to wherever it came from, for simplicity back into a cube. Yes, it is a multi-use magic item. If this were a single-use item, you'd be told so in the description. But that's too powerful. Well, just give the players some magic swords instead, why don't you? The tower is vulnerable to siege engines, so maybe a battlefield isn't the best place for it. Though the front door can be opened by the user only, whether inside or outside, that detail-free trapdoor on the roof has no such magical padlock on it. Grab a few woodworking tools, boys. Sounds like scaling ladders are back on the menu. The tower roof is open. Expect missile fire or attacks by flying creatures. Magically, the fortress can't be toppled, meaning by giants, dragons, or the dreaded Tarrasque. But a severe earthquake would send it tumbling down a new fissure wide enough to take it. Rocks fall. Everyone who doesn't bribe the Dungeon Master dies. Curiously, a determined force could attack and destroy the front wall, leaving the front door rather absurdly intact on full hit points. Losing the roof would be awful. And those arrow slits, wide enough to take a fireball. Based on the model, I'd hazard a guess and say the arrow slits are one floor up. This makes me wonder what happens to the floor between levels if a fireball gets in there, and how hard is it to shoot at a character up in the battlements? These are questions for another time, according to the entry in the DM's guide, as it just doesn't care about these things. You'll have to cast the runes and divine the chicken bones by looking at other sections of D&D rules to cobble together practical answers to impractical questions. If you are prepared to give this item to players only to remove it from them 5 minutes later, rethink your dungeon mastering style, or seek new players. This is why Boromir can't have nice things. So, what happens if you activate this fortress in an enclosed space, a low-ceilinged cavern, say? Reward player stupidity by dishing out damage to the roof of the fortress and the ceiling of the cavern. Any characters close to the resultant rockfall or cave collapse are in trouble. Always apply the helpful hint before dishing out this ruling. Ask the player, are you sure you want to do that? A question that always leads to a great answer.